Today is my birthday. I'm going to be 57 years old. I know you're not supposed to tell people that, but it is what it is. I'm almost 60. It's hard to believe. I've been thinking about aging and getting old. And I'll be honest, I am just not a fan at all. I'm totally not a fan of aging. I remember when I was in my 20s, I developed a kind of fear or just a dread. Just every time I thought about getting old, I would just feel awful and just think how terrible it would be to get old. And I didn't want to be aging. Part of the problem was people in my family were aging. My grandmother had a stroke and she ended up in a nursing home for several years. My grandfather had several heart attacks and he ended up in assisted living before he passed away. My husband's grandmother and grandfather both had cancer and they didn't age well. Everybody I knew was miserable when they got to a certain age. And I just thought that was awful. I hated to see these vibrant, exciting people that I knew and I loved not be themselves anymore. They couldn't be who they were made to be. They were just degrading. And it was hard. And so that developed a fear in me and I didn't like it until I was in my 30s or something. And I saw this article in the National Geographic. And it talked about how there were certain areas of the world that had centenarians, people who lived longer than the average people. In fact, the centenarians, they lived 100 years old. So in certain areas of the world, there are people who more consistently live to be over 100. So they found people in Okinawa, Japan, and Sardinia, Italy, and Costa Rica, and they were not just living to be over 100, but they were living to be healthy. There were these people 95 years old and they're water skiing and they have great community and they're not getting sick and they're not miserable in their old age. They're just vibrant. In fact, there was this one story. One of the areas that was most interesting to me was the Seventh-day Adventists. And they found a group in Loma Linda, California, who were living longer than the average American, like 7 to 10 years longer. And they were in the centenarian group. And the reason it was the people in Loma Linda, California, and not all Seventh-day Adventists is because there's like a big group of people there. There's a school, there's a medical center, and medical school. And so that's where they were able to pinpoint that these Seventh-day Adventists were living 7 to 10 years longer than the average American, and they were living to be 100. And as they did the research, it was all Seventh-day Adventists, because the Seventh-day Adventists have this thing that they like to call the health message. And it just gives them some guidelines to follow health, the biblical guidelines that they use to be healthier, what God had intended for us when he created us. And so one of the guys in there was a 95-year-old heart surgeon. His name was Ellsworth Wareham. I got to interview him at one point, and he was a heart surgeon, and he was still assisting in heart surgery at 95 years old. And his brain was sharp. He was very clear. He could do he would do the same things he was. The funniest story, though, was he needed a fence. He needed a fence built around his house or in his property. And so he called some people in to, give him a bid on how much this was going to cost. And at 95 years old, he decided to build the fence himself because it was too expensive to have them do it. Now, if I can be building fences and making decisions like that when I'm 95, then I'm okay with getting old. I'm happy to get old and be 90 and be able to do that. And so I did a lot of research into the different things that helps these people to get to age better. Now, again, I want to be very clear that you're not going to guarantee that you're going to age well. I've known a lot of people who have who have gotten sick or gotten cancer or something like that, even though they do follow the health guidelines, because there's no guarantees in this world, and the world we live in has sin in it. There is bad things here. There's genetics, there's environment, but there are things that we can do to improve our chances of our later years being better years. And if we can do something like that, it's almost like a retirement plan for our health. I would rather put a lot of time and energy into good health for my retirement than I would be to have a lot of money. So we've been practicing some of these health things since we were in our 20s, but as the research is showing, you can start and get good results now. You can I'm in my 50s, and even in your 50s and 60s and 70s, everything you do can improve your health and improve your ability to have great years in your retirement or as you get older. And again, there's no guarantee, but if you want to improve your chances, then following these health guidelines would be a great option. One of the things that they suggest is to adopt a plant-based diet. In fact, all of the blue zone areas are at least 90% plant-based. Some of them in different areas will eat some fish or some other meats, but the ones that tend to live the longest are mostly at least 90% plant-based. They also have movement in their life. They don't necessarily go to the gym or exercise like that, but they can. But they don't, everything's not close to them. They get out and they do things. They garden, they walk, they have a purpose in their life. So their movement has purpose, and also their lives have purpose. They have a reason to get up in the morning. They have people and community around them. And those are the things that I want to promote here. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the cookbook that I wrote. My first cookbook, Give Them Something Better, has stories in it, and it has articles about the 4 main things that Dan Buettner, the gentleman who wrote the Blue Zone studies, the Blue Zone book, and the National Geographic article. It has 4 or 5 articles of the things that he said were the most important to Blue Zone living, or the most important things to the Seventh-day Adventists, because the Seventh-day Adventists had some special things that the other people didn't have, or a different way of doing it than they did. So if you are interested in that, I'll try to create a download of maybe those articles from my book and put them under, this video. Hopefully it'll be there right away. It may not be there right when this video goes live, so check back. But I just wanted you to know that if you are thinking about getting old, or you're feeling like you are getting old, it's not too late to start thinking about improving your health for your old age, so that you don't have to suffer or struggle or be a burden or whatever it is that you have a dread in your life. Because I know I certainly did, and I'm so thankful that I don't stress about that as much anymore, and I have done all I can do to be healthy. And if something goes wrong, then it's okay, because God has it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you later.